It was a crazy day in college hoops yesterday as well. We had Duke taking down Michigan, Arizona on the road against Houston, Iowa State falls at BYU, Florida once again imposes their dominance on a lower tier SEC team. Plenty to talk about with Joe Rexrode of The Athletic, also the co-host of Robbie and Rexrode on 102.5 The Game in Nashville. Morning, Joe. I guess it's afternoon now. How are you? And what'd you think of, let's start with Duke and Michigan last night. And we've talked about it a little bit already today. Michigan just looking a little disjointed in a tight ball game against the top-tier opponent.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. I'm a little tired. I was staying up for, Iowa State BYU, and it's like you got to get up at 6:30 for the gold medal game. So it's been a pretty amazing weekend. But, no, I was just so impressed with Duke last night and their defensive plan. Out-rebounding Michigan 41-28. I would not have guessed anyone this year would have done that to Michigan. You think about some of the plays that John Scheyer drew up out of timeouts, some of his ATOs late. I mean, just perfection. And obviously Cameron Boozer. I mean, I still look at Michigan, and I think that's the best team. If I had to bet on someone right now to win it all, I would still go with Michigan. But you did see there that they aren't a great three-point shooting team. They just blitzed Purdue Tuesday. They were 13 for 23. They're 6 for 25 last night. You see what can happen if you force them to. That's where they're vulnerable: turnovers and the three-point shot. But just Duke's physicality defensively, and then of course Boozer. I mean, I think he's the National Player of the Year, and you saw why late in that game.
Joe, we posed this question earlier on in the show. Should John Scheyer be given more credit for the success that he's had at Duke since taking over for Coach K?
I think that's a great question, and I think absolutely yes. Look, he inherited a Ferrari, right? So Duke has this. When you're what they've been as a program for 40 years, you do have built-in advantages, and they've done an incredible job of maximizing that and taking advantage of so many different things to be just a machine when it comes to recruiting. But it is so hard most people would say do not be the first person after a legend. Be the next person. Be Roy Williams after Bill Guthridge follows Dean Smith. But don't be the first person. And I think he absolutely deserves way more credit than he gets and probably will get. I just think he has a great demeanor. He's a new age coach, and he's obviously just a really good X's and O's coach. I think he's the complete package as a coach. And yes, there are some people who say, okay, well, put John Scheyer on Minnesota and let's see what he does. I mean, you could always say something like that, right? People used to say that about Roy Williams, but the bottom line is it's still not easy to be as elite as they've been to maintain that standard, and he's done that.
So we had 1 versus 3. We also had 2 versus 4 yesterday, Joe. And Arizona goes on the road and scores 73 on Houston, which against the Cougars is pretty notable. I think more notable the fact that Houston has really run into trouble over the last week, not just forcing turnovers. I think they only forced 5 in this game against Arizona, but getting points off turnovers. That's something that with their defense under Kelvin Sampson, they've always been able to do. And I don't know if this is just a rough spot for them, if it's level of competition in the case of Arizona, obviously, or is this something to worry about headed down the stretch into the tournament?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you're absolutely right. I mean, Houston is one of the best teams, historically over years under Kelvin Sampson at turning teams over and taking advantage of it. And, so let's see. I think lower than 8%, 4 times in 408 games, under Kelvin Sampson. And that's both last week. It's hard for me to explain that other than, teams know what they want to do. And both of the teams they played last week were just tremendous in terms of their execution. But it is a little bit of a concern. I've thought all year that Houston I just feel like they have a great chance to be there in the end, especially with Kingston Flemings and what he is as a freshman. But Arizona did a great job. Kelvin Sampson does use a lot of freshmen with this team. Maybe they're a little light inside at times. Chris Sanaka is a tremendous talent, but Arizona sort of took advantage of him yesterday some. And it's a little bit of a wake-up call, I think, for Houston. I still think when it comes down to it, we get into this tournament, they're going to be a really, really tough out.
What's the ceiling for BYU now that Richie Saunders is out? I mean, we saw DeBanza have just an incredible performance yesterday against Iowa State, but is this a BYU team that can be a Final Four team without Saunders?
Man, it's hard for me to see, it's hard for me to conceive a Final Four with this team without Saunders. He's so important to what they do. And look, all credit to them. Tremendous energy last night. I just thought for most of that game, they were just, they won all the 50-50 battles. They were desperate. You're playing in a fantastic atmosphere, a huge win. And DeBonsa, I will say, like, if that's what DeBonsa is going to be the rest of the year, first of all, I have to think he's the number one pick. And second of all, maybe he is the type of talent who can carry that team, and they can go deeper than I want to give him credit for now. It's just that, look, it's not a great defensive team, and they're in the 40s in defensive efficiency. And the depth obviously is strained a lot with Saunders, but he is like that. DeBonsa is just a special player. So we still want to see what they do, away from home and things like that. But they also battled really well against Arizona. So I mean, at least they're responding well here to that awful loss.
Joe Rexrode of The Athletic with us here on BetMGM Gameday on Westwood One Sports. You can also catch him on 102.5 The Game in Nashville, co-host of Robbie and Rexrode. He's all over everything college basketball, especially coming out of yesterday's action. The other side of that coin is Iowa State going on the road and losing in conference again. They only have 4 losses this year, Joe. And I go back and forth on Iowa State because there are times like, the loss to TCU, granted on the road in the Big 12, and I go, man, is this team legit? But then they bounced back with a huge win against Kansas. And then they lose to BYU on the road. Although you just made a good point. DeBansa may be the best, but he's definitely one of the 3 best players in college ball. They're scheduled down the stretch. They've got one more trip on the road in the Big 12 that I think will test them at Arizona. But they get Utah on Tuesday night, I believe it is. So what is Iowa State's ceiling? Is this a high-variance team, or is this a team that should be expected to make a deep, deep run for the first time in a long time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, man, it's really hard for me with Iowa State because at times they look so good, and, they sometimes I think they have issues a little bit with matchups in the backcourt. I mean, as much as I love Taman Lipsy, he's had some tremendous plays, obviously. I mean, you think about, the play he made down the stretch against Houston. Joshua Jefferson is an amazing player. I mean, he's an All-American. Sometimes I think they get picked on with their guard size and do they have enough inside? But at the same time, I mean, you're talking about, a team with a lot going for it. They have been a much better team, obviously at home than away, right? Like you lose the game to Cincy. Now, of course, Cincy looks pretty good right now, but that was not when Cincinnati was playing well. You mentioned you lose the game to TCU. But we've also seen them go into West Lafayette and absolutely just blow the doors off Purdue. At that point, I was like, that might be the best thing in the country, but I also thought a little bit more of Purdue then, at the time. I still think I think Iowa State immediately falls off the 1 line, which of course the committee said that they're on the 1 line. I was a little bit surprised by that yesterday, that they put them on the 1 line. I think they immediately probably fall off for UConn, but they're probably a 2 at worst, and it's hard to, playing in St. Louis. I mean, it's hard to count them out for making a run.
Joe, this is a kind of a loaded question, and unfortunately, I'm only going to give you about a minute to answer because we're kind of up against the clock here. But with Kansas getting blown out yesterday and Darren Peterson actually playing a full 32 minutes, like, do those kind of go hand in hand at all, of him finally being back on the floor and that not being the norm for this Kansas team? And again, about a minute left.
Yeah, like I totally have rejected that idea. You know, obviously, they beat Arizona without him. Look, it's an amazing performance. And then you see yesterday what happens. He plays 32 minutes. I do feel like there's maybe some chemistry stuff going on. Now, their ceiling is higher with him. They're not going to the Final Four if they don't have him on the floor. I don't believe. I don't think they have enough. But I think we are seeing that all the time he's missing and the uncertainty is hurting chemistry, and they need to figure that out quickly.
Joe, great stuff. We appreciate you taking the time today. Enjoy the rest of what has already been an awesome sports weekend. We appreciate you jumping on with us.
Okay, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Joe Rexrode of The Athletic, co-host of Robbie and Rexrode on 102.5 The Game in Nashville, on everything college hoops related that we've seen. The other thing that I think, we mentioned it briefly off the top of the show, Kate, is Florida continues to assert its dominance too. Sure, it's in the SEC, and a lot of it's been against lower tier SEC teams, but they may be a team who's hitting their stride at just the right time and trying to defend the title.
And they're a team that knows what it takes to win a title. I mean, I know there's obviously some roster turnover, but a team that has won seven games in a row, and that's 7 of their last maybe like 12. Or I'm sorry, that's 11 of maybe their last 12. I'm doing some really quick math here, just looking at their schedule. And it's not like they're just beating any old teams. I mean, you did beat Kentucky, ranked 25th, Alabama ranked 23rd, Vandy 10th, Tennessee, Georgia, they're both ranked. So they have a lot of really good ranked wins. I think Florida, they wouldn't even be a sneaky team, quote unquote, but a team that certainly could make some deep noise come couple weeks when we get into March.